Hello, and welcome back to the 4th episode of May's Motel. Last week I covered the gruesome traps created by Jigsaw and his followers. This week is another real-life killer, Alexander Pichushkin, also known as the chessboard killer. Because his name is long and hard to say, I'm just going to call him Alex throughout the episode. I also want to apologize because I struggled to find information on this case, and I left out names of the victims only because I learned of their names in a documentary, and I couldn't really tell what their names were just from listening to it, and I didn't know how to spell any of them. So I'll link the documentary below so you can hear their names and listen to the full story, because I don't want the victims to be forgotten at all. When I think of a chessboard, I think of the black and white tiles lined diagonally, and the knight pieces defending their king and queen. For Alex, the chessboard represents the number of killers that he intends to kill. There are 64 squares on a chessboard, therefore Alex's goal is to kill 64 people.
That's a weird number to strive for.
Well, it's the chessboard. It's important to him. I don't know how to play chess, and I'm sure not all of you do either, so let's go over some of the history of chess. Chess is a game played between two players, either recreationally or competitively. The current game of chess started in Southern Europe during the second half of the 15th century. It was a game that evolved from other games of Indian and Persian origin. Chess is played on a square board with 64 squares arranged in an 8x8 grid. One player controls the black pieces and the other controls the white pieces. Each player has 16 pieces, 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 knights, 2 bishops, and 8 pawns. The object of the game is to checkmate the opponent's king while the king is under immediate attack.
I just learned how to play chess this year.
Was it hard?
It's not hard to learn the very basics, but it's hard to play against people who have played a while.
Yeah, it's very strategic. The game can also end in a draw. Organized chess began in the 19th century. Today, chess competitions are governed internationally by the International Chess Federation. The first world champion of chess was Wilhelm Steinitz, who claimed the title in 1886. Magnus Carlsen holds the current title of chess world champion. Chess is a very popular strategy game that is taken very seriously among many. Perhaps something within the game is what intrigued Alex to use it as his inspiration for murder. Alexander Pichushkin was born on April 9th, 1974 in Moscow. There is not much about his early life that I could find. However, I did learn that around the age of 4, he fell off a swing and it hit him in the forehead as it swung back, which caused the frontal cortex of his brain to become damaged.
Ouch.
This type of brain damage is known to produce poor impulse regulation and a tendency towards aggression. Because he was so young, the damage was more severe because a child's forehead provides only a fraction of the protection compared to an adult.
So it's like Phineas Gage.
What?
Phineas Gage, I don't know if you learned it in high school. I remember we learned in psychology. He was a guy who had like a pole run through his frontal brain, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
and he had the same symptoms. He was like aggressive and stuff.
I've never heard of him.
Gotcha. Maybe you people who paid attention in school did.
When you said Phineas, I thought of Phineas and Ferb. He became hostile and impulsive after the swing accident, so his mother sent him to a school for children with learning disabilities. At his old school, Alex was physically and verbally bullied. His grandfather thought that Alex was very intelligent, and he believed that the school he was now attending focused more on overcoming disabilities rather than promoting academic achievement. Because of this, Alex began to live with his grandfather, and he was encouraged to pursue intellectual pursuits outside of school. Chess became one of his strongest interests. He turned out to be an outstanding chess player. He would play against elderly men in Bitsa Park, and he found that he was able to control his aggression while he was dominating the chessboard. Alex continued to be bullied, and he suffered a devastating loss when his grandfather died, and he was forced to go back to live with his mother. Alex would consume large amounts of vodka to help him cope with the loss of his grandfather, and also it helped him calm his aggressive tendencies.
Wait, how old was he when he was drinking?
I assume teens. I don't really know. Like I said, there's not a lot of info I could find on him. It's hard to tell everything. He continued playing chess with the men at the park, and he would drink with them, but unlike them, he could still play very well after being intoxicated. Alex had also begun a disturbing habit of recording children and threatening them. He would re-watch the videos he took to reaffirm his power, but by 1992, this act was not enough to fulfill his urges.
Not a good sign.
Sorry about this butchering of the name, but Evgeny Pichushkin was a psychiatrist who looked into Alex's background after his upcoming arrest, and he could only tell that he led a very lonely life. He tried to live with women several times, and he even tried to start a family, but he was unsuccessful. On October 15th, 2005, police found the first body in the woods of Bitsa Park. The body suffered intense injuries to the head.
Oh no.
The next body was found a month later. Another body was found 2 weeks after that, and another body was found only a week after that one.
Dang, is this all like the same area?
Yeah.
Wow.
By Christmas, there were a total of 7 bodies found murdered and mutilated in Bitsa Park.
That's crazy.
The trademark injury seemed to be a vodka bottle or a stick stuck into the back of the victim's head. This came as a shock to the community because Bitsa Park was a very popular place to enjoy nature or play chess. The park is where Alex spent much of his childhood playing chess with the older men. Andrei Superneko became the lead investigator on the case in February 2006 when the police realized that they were dealing with a serial killer. The murders were a huge mystery. There was almost no trace of the killer left at the crime scenes or on the bodies themselves. They also had no idea what the motive could have been. The forensic evidence was limited, but they did have an idea about a possible murder weapon. Professor Vladimir Vorontsov was the forensic scientist who studied the injuries on the bodies, and he noted that the most massive injuries were made on the back of the head and the face. From the injuries, he was able to determine that the weapon used had an angled edge, possibly being a hammer.
Hammer? It's brutal.
Yeah. I learned that serial killers like to be more personal, so they'll use like a hammer or a knife rather than a gun.
Oh my gosh.
While examining one body, bits of plastic were found in a skin sample. They concluded that the plastic could have been part of the weapon that was used. The police were desperate to find a suspect. There was a psychiatric sanitarium near Bitsa Park, and some patients were allowed access to have a day release at the park. Because of this, the police thought that the killer could have been a patient. Many people at the park were stopped and questioned by police, but the theory of the killer being a psychiatric patient ultimately went nowhere. Police continued to stake out the park, and they would question anyone they deemed suspicious. They stopped a transvestite and found that he was carrying a hammer in his purse. The police believed they had caught the right guy, but he said he carried the hammer to protect himself, and he had a strong alibi.
Right, that's just being prejudiced.
Yeah, but this was a long time ago, so.
Not as tolerant. Get with the times, people.
In April of 2006, they found the body of a woman. All the previous victims had been men. 2 months later, the body of a second woman was found. And in June, the third woman's body was found. All of the women had similar injuries to the previous victims of the men. One of the woman's sons was able to provide vital evidence. His mother had left a note stating where she was going and who she was with before she disappeared. In the note, she said she was going to Bitsa Park with a man named Sasha. In Russia, Sasha is a shortened name for Alexander, and they found out that the women worked at the same supermarket as Alex. Investigators located Alex's address, and they got surveillance footage from the metro station where they saw Alex walking with the woman that he would later kill. On June 16th, he was arrested for the murder of this woman. He remained calm and he denied everything. At this time, he was only suspected of 1 murder, and within hours, he confessed to killing that woman. Investigators suspected Alex of killing 14 people based on the bodies that they found in Bitsa Park. However, Alex later confessed to 61 murders, 60 of them being in Bitsa Park. He said he had been killing over the course of 14 years. Alex had also admitted to using a hammer as his murder weapon, and there were scratches found on the hammer's handle that matched the plastic particles that they had found earlier, proving that the hammer was in fact the murder weapon. Investigators searched his apartment and found a chessboard with numbers on each square, which they learned each number and square represented a murder.
It would have made more sense if he murdered them with like a chest, or if that was his mark that he left behind.
I guess so, but it's kind of small.
Yeah, but still, if you leave it like on top of the body, I feel like that would have made a lot more sense than just leaving a vodka bottle. Like, what's
He
that?
was probably drinking while he was doing it and just left
Fair
it there.
enough.
Alex shared how he used the sewers to dispose of the bodies. He blamed the police for not trying hard enough to find the bodies. Why did he stop disposing of the bodies in the sewers and began leaving the bodies out in the open? Investigators believe he couldn't keep quiet anymore. He wanted to be caught and he wanted the attention. He enjoyed everything being about him. He liked the audience from the courts and the media. When asked if he had any regrets, he said, "I regret that you arrested me so early. I was planning to murder another woman in today's time." Alex had also once said that your first murder is like the first love you never forget. The closer the person is to you, the more pleasant it is to kill him. He showed no remorse at all.
Wow, that's messed up.
Alex was asked to reenact his crimes. They used a dummy to allow him to show how he smashed their skulls with the hammer, and he would put sticks and bottles into the wounds. He remembered every killing perfectly, and he knew the woods very well. He was also very good at getting along with people and making them feel comfortable with him, but when the right moment came, he would smash their heads in with the hammer. He lured many of his victims in by telling them that they could visit his dead dog's grave. He would provide enough alcohol to intoxicate them before hitting them in the back of the head.
Okay, that's how. Because I was like, just randomly inviting somebody to see your dead dog's grave. I would not take the offer.
Weird.
Even if it was a close friend, I'd be like, I'm good, buddy.
But it's still weird. Why do you want to go drink and look at a dead dog's grave?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It makes a little more sense because you said they were intoxicated, so clearly your reasoning is out kind of out the window when you're intoxicated.
He said he aimed for the back of the head because he did not want to get blood on his clothing. Most of his victims were homeless senior men. Alex stated that he chose people that he knew to be alcoholics or drug addicts because it was easier to kill them, and investigators suspect that he also chose people that would not be missed immediately. Along with homeless men, he also killed at least 10 people who were his neighbors, and 3 of them had lived in the same apartment complex as him. Many serial killers keep some kind of trophy from their killing. Like, remember Jeffrey Dahmer keeping all the body parts?
Oh, yeah.
Alex kept a notebook that had a drawing of a chessboard in it. Each square of the chessboard had a date written on it that corresponded to each of the murders.
I mean, it's still really messed up that he did this, but at least he's not keeping body parts in his work locker.
Yeah. At the time of his arrest, 61 of the 64 squares were filled, all having a date on each square. He later stated that he would continue to kill even after the squares were full. His trial lasted 6 weeks, and a verdict was reached in only less than 3 hours. His time in court was spent locked in a glass cage for his safety and the safety of everyone in the courtroom. His actions were purposeful and consistent. He knew exactly what he was doing. Therefore, he was deemed sane, and he could not get away on an insanity plea. Russian legislature no longer allowed the death penalty, so he was sentenced to life imprisonment, and the first 15 years would be spent in solitary confinement. It is speculated that Alex was motivated to kill more than Andrei Chikatilo, who was convicted of killing 53 children and women over a 12-year period.
Whoa.
Alex was determined to kill 64 people, so he could beat the number of victims Chikatilo had, and also to complete every square on the chessboard. He also explained that his motive for killing was simply because it made him feel like God. And we explored the God complex in the episode of John Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
While John picked his victims in hopes of teaching them a lesson to not take life for granted, Alex liked to be the person that decided whether a person lived or died. In both instances, I think they liked to feel power over others.
Mm-hmm.
In 2014, a Russian woman named Natalia expressed her love for Alex after seeing a TV program about him and his crimes.
What the heck?
She claims it was love at first sight.
Oh my gosh.
Alex proposed to her in 2016, but the Russian prison system did not allow them to marry. Natalia still maintains devotion to Alex and said that she was more proud of her groom as if he were a Hollywood star.
Oh my gosh.
I don't understand how so many people become infatuated with criminals.
Right. I think she needs to go to that mental institution you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier.
I understand finding them intriguing and wanting to learn more about them, like myself, but I would never contact a criminal in prison and pursue a relationship with them. What is it about criminals that makes some women treat them like celebrities? They're only encouraging the killer's behavior. The attention is exactly what Alex wanted, and Natalia gave it to him, even comparing him to a Hollywood star, in which he is in no way a talented celebrity like those in Hollywood. Alex is a murderer. He should not have girls throwing themselves at him and devoting their lives to him.
Exactly.
So this was my hardest video to research so far. Alex loved the publicity and attention, so I wonder why so little of his life is known. From what I've seen, serial killers love to talk, and they share so much about their lives. However, in this case, Alex didn't seem to share much from his personal life before the killing. With so little known about his background, it is hard to completely understand why it became one of Russia's most prolific killers. I think it may have sprung from the death of his grandfather. The death really hit him hard, and that seems to be the inspiration for the amount of people he killed. If his grandfather never introduced him to chess, would he still have become a cold-blooded killer? I think it is also obvious that Alex suffered from loneliness, but I don't understand how that can turn you towards murder.
Mm-hmm.
What about being lonely makes you think, oh, I'm just going to go out and start killing people?
Exactly.
I believe that Alex got what he deserves by spending 15 years in solitary confinement and the rest of his life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he was killing people just because he could, and he enjoyed the publicity that he received afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So he deserves to spend the rest of his life alone, where he can't hurt any more innocent people.
Yeah.
While I wish there was more to be learned about his personal life, I think no matter what his life was like, the outcome would have stayed the same.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and check out my Patreon linked below. Check in for another stay next week, where I dive into another fictional killer. Or should I say killers in this case. Stay tuned to find out who I'll be going over, and comment down below who you think they might be.